Alright, we're live.
Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining Talking Shop. My name is Sam Durrani, and this is our second episode of Talking Shop here at Hangar 6. Today, we have our guest Huade Tan with Plankton Climbing.
Hey guys.
We're going to be discussing his company, his entrepreneurial efforts, and we'll take it from there. Thank you again for joining, and let's introduce Huade. Huade, thank you very much for joining us today, and for telling us about your company, and for sharing kind of your insights and experiences as you started this new endeavor.
Yeah, absolutely. Really happy to be here. Thanks for having me. It's good to be in the new building.
Yeah, absolutely.
New facilities, all these new toys. It's awesome. So, a little bit, I guess, about Planted. We started this thing in 2019, September of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's when I first met you.
Yeah.
And we came in and we started prototyping, doing all sorts of building, all sorts of cool stuff. And it's just been growing from there. We're developing the Planted, I guess, brand, and we're building up all the new things that we're planning on doing this year.
Right. Let's take a step back. Tell me a little bit about Plankton. Kind of what inspired you to start the company, and what exactly you do at Plankton, or what was the original initial goal for starting Plankton?
Sure. Yeah. Not to get too far back in the weeds, but Plankton ultimately is, in my mind, a carbon sequestration company, and the end goal is to scale up a method of manufacturing with alternative materials that are carbon negative. Mm-hmm. We're not there right now, and we're not there yet, but the intent of it is to really kind of get people to think about what things are made out of and how they're made, rather than just ordering something off of Amazon again.
Right.
So the reason we started with climbing equipment. Oh, by the way, Plankton makes climbing equipment.
Yeah.
The reason we started off with climbing is I personally enjoy climbing. I enjoy climbing with people that also enjoy climbing, and also it's kind of an outdoor enthusiast market where people are already predisposed to the let's help the environment initiative.
Yeah.
So far the feedback has been great when we talk about it, but I don't really like to talk about the whole carbon sequestration thing that much.
Sure.
Because it'll take us a while to get there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Understood. All right. I guess let's touch base a little bit about more of the background of how you started Plankton. So some of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs that come here to Hangar 6 want to know is, did you start your company while you were working somewhere else, or did you, or is this a full-time endeavor? And kind of how did you really get off the ground and get funded? Was this bootstrapped? Do you have friends and family support behind you? Kind of how did you get off the ground?
Yeah, all of the above, I would say, and funding's a continuing thing, right? There's definitely, I wouldn't say we're a VC-backed company at all, right? Okay. But to get back to kind of the decision-making of starting Plankton, I guess my wife and I lived in LA for a bit, and worked there. Both of us were working, and at one point we were like, okay, we're not ever going to settle down in LA, because we weren't going to buy a house and raise a family in LA. The prices are just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. We basically researched the entire country, and we said we're coming to RTP, right? There's a ton of cool things happening in RTP, right. A lot of really smart people, new companies starting up here. I have a very optimistic view of where RTP is going to be in the next 10, 20 years, right? Or not just RTP, but North Carolina in general.
Yes.
Right? So that's why we kind of made the decision to invest here. So we packed up LA, moved here. My wife works in the life sciences industry, so it was really, convenient and easy for us to relocate here for her. And I decided to start this company here because there's also a rich history of manufacturing and agriculture in North Carolina as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like long term that will kind of put itself together pretty well. In terms of funding, bootstrapping, number one, right? So basically I do engineering contracting for a year before and continuously now. And that's what pays the bills most of the time, right? And it's basically helping other companies set up their designs, builds, like prototyping services. And now I'm helping someone even set up a CNC and set up their machinery.
Yeah.
So that is the non-hardware side where you can still get contract payments for hours worked, and then you just work as many hours as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Right. that opens up the loot train to fund into buying equipment and buying tools and paying for other things, paying for hardware development.
Yeah.
Because hardware is expensive at the end of the day. Last year we also, when we started, we have friends and family, or mostly friends, I guess, at this point. So I have a business partner, Jill. She's up in Boston. We've known each other for a very long time. I said, Jill, let's do this. And we started, and we put our essentially checks together and open up the company. And then late last year, we also opened it up to another friend. So we basically have 3 investors in the company. And then also we were very fortunate, I almost forgot, very fortunate to win the NC Idea micro grant last year.
Right.
And we kind of threw our hat in the ring. We didn't know what we were doing. But I think, we're very fortunate to have been considered, and we're part of the cohort for last fall.
Yeah.
Very excited to be a part of that, and we're just basically doing whatever we can to make this dream come true.
That's awesome. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about what you did at Hangar 6 and what kind of physical prototyping you were doing here. So I know one thing that we don't have here sample is the large volumetric forms that you had created.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that process and kind of how you found your way to Hangar 6 and the prototypes that you were creating here.
Sure. Yeah, these were created here, but definitely I didn't bring the large volumes.
Sure. Yeah.
One thing maybe to explain is what the large volumes even are.
Sure,
I guess on our social media or Instagram, you can kind of see what they are. Like climbing walls are massive structures.
Mm-hmm.
They're good built. They last for 30 years. Volumes are somewhat smaller. They go onto the walls themselves,
mm-hmm.
and they give operators a chance to change up the 3D geometry of the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And they range from anything the size of like a kitchen sink to something the size of this table. So one of our the largest volumes we make was the size of this table.
Wow.
So not convenient to bring that. So
yeah, of course.
sorry.
Yeah.
I brought some of the mini edges. These are Gen 2 mini edges. We're working on Gen 3 right now. I brought kind of our hanging tool, grip trainer, and these were all prototyped and done here in the very beginning. And when I heard that Hangar 6 has all the tools, all the basic woodworking, all the basic furnace, paint booth, right? Like all the stuff that you really need to get started. I said, yeah, this is the place to be. And that's where we kind of started early last year, I think. Or late 2019 or early 2020.
Yeah.
Something like that. But yeah, the first few prototypes were all made here. And we used the CNC, we used the woodworking, the wood shop mostly. We used the paint booth, the oven, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the processing is quite intensive, but at the prototyping stage, everything's manually intensive.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so tell me a little bit about. Let's talk a little bit about Plankton, and talk about who your end customer is going to be, and kind of what you've learned as you put together your company and as you grow.
Yeah, so customers are super important. We love our customers. For everyone who's tried out or tested or bought a planted product, really thank you guys. I think that's where that's where the rubber meets the road, really. Like the differentiation between, say, a hobby and a business is for a hobby, you do it just because for yourself.
Yeah.
And like if you're a business, someone actually likes what you're doing and is willing to pay for it. So I think that is ultimately the key. And that's kind of an ongoing thing. Planted, we're always trying to figure out, okay, who would actually be interested in doing something like this? And going all the way back to the whole carbon sequestration thing, right? It's like, well, everyone knows about the environmental problems, right? Everyone knows about, like, what carbon negative materials could possibly do, right? Or has heard of it. And the real question is, well, how do we actually turn it into action, right? And the only thing that really turns it into action is, well, if someone's interested in what you're doing and would like to, be a part of that by giving you a monetary, like injection of, okay, let's keep doing more of that, then that's a customer, and that's what really makes sense. So our first customers were the climbing gyms in the area.
Mm-hmm.
So our very first customer is Triangle Rock Club. So really appreciate those guys for taking us on when we had basically nothing, right? And basically started prototyping for them.
Yeah.
And since then we've been growing outside the Triangle. We're at Progression, we're at Traffic Chapel Community Center. Now we're at 9 other gyms in the Western North Carolina, and now in South Carolina area. So,
all right.
Yeah, the more we get to interact with those people and talk about what they're interested in, the better our products become, right? And the more in tune with, okay, this makes sense. This is the, say, texture that makes sense, or this is the shape that makes sense, or this is what actually gets used, right? So at the end of the day, if no one uses it and there's no actual need for it in the marketplace, then I do it.
Agreed. Can you tell me a little bit about how the pandemic and the lockdowns associated with it kind of affected Planted?
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think, the lockdowns affected everyone.
Sure.
Right? So there's some winners, some losers, definitely, and it's hard to predict these kinds of things. Definitely the gym industry has been hit hard.
Yeah.
And all those guys are suffering. So it's out of their control, really. And so we're just trying to help as much as we can, support the industry, right? I believe there's a long-term interest in the activity of the climbing and the social, physical, like beneficial aspects of that sport and of that kind of lifestyle. Yeah. So I think after the pandemic, the industry will rebound, and we're going to be there to support the entire way. During this time, certain other industries have done really well. For example, in the same climbing industry, like home walls are a big thing, and adapting to home walls, and like people building things in their shed, or people building things out like in their backyard or in their garage and whatnot. That's been a whole confusing kind of like customer development, because it's very very interesting, but happened very quickly.
Yeah,
I'd say like COVID really has shifted behaviors very, very rapidly, right? Like something that would happen maybe over decades has happened over months, right? So like a lot of companies are, like a lot of people are just having a hard time kind of adapting to the change,
right?
And if you can adapt to the change quickly, then you can, be relevant. If you can't adapt to the change quickly, then it's much harder.
Okay.
So like we have to change kind of what we build, and we have to change how we interface and how we engage with people to like make sure we're still relevant.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's I'd say that's COVID in a nutshell. It's like the adaptable will like make do, and certain things just won't work out. I feel like that's probably true long time scale for anything.
Yeah.
But this has just been like a step change,
Sure.
right? Like almost overnight
It's
step
an
change.
absolute shift. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not complaining about it from the Plankton side or anything like that. It's been kind of an interesting thing, definitely, to start a company maybe a few months before a global pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So like we timed that thing really well. Like we almost knew this was going to happen. But I would say, yeah, definitely, it's never a good time for a global pandemic, and I mean, we'll just have to adapt. We all have to adapt.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. So let's change directions a little bit and talk a little bit about what you anticipate might be the next steps for Plankton. You know, like as you move forward, as you adapt, and how you're planning on keeping the company not only surviving but hopefully thriving. You know, as we go into a very different post-pandemic world that I'm hoping we'll get here sooner than later. Maybe we can just touch base a little bit on this product, for example. And was this excuse me, tell me the name of this, the official name of this?
Oh yeah, so it's we call it the Infini Edge, and the inspiration comes from a local climber, Kyle Long, who climbs out of Chapel Hill. He is highly ranked national climber in para climbing, I believe. And good friend. We just chatted about what he wants, right? And this is an example of talking to someone who wants something that doesn't exist,
right?
And we just make it happen.
Yeah.
And the inspiration is with climbing, there's a whole branch of it called hangboard training or campus training or just hanging to build up your finger strength. And the typical way of doing that is you buy a big block of wood that has a bunch of holes in it and then just hang from it. Sounds kind of ridiculous.
Right.
But this is a thing people do.
Yeah.
Definitely, if you want to get stronger, you need to do this on kind of a regular basis, almost like a religious thing. But in order to do that, you have to have space, right?
Yeah.
You have to have a facility, or you have to have a garage, or even a dedicated door frame or something like that. And we were chatting about, okay, well, how could you make it more accessible, right? How can you make a product that you can do the same thing, right? But you don't need to, even have the capability. You don't even need to have a door frame that you're able to mount something on permanently, right? Like say if you're in an apartment and you're renting, right? You probably don't want to be drilling into your walls, right? And doing all that stuff. So we came up with the Infini Edge to give everyone access to it. You can basically use this to replace an entire setup because it's flexible, it's continuously adjustable, which infinitely adjustable is where the name comes from, Infini Edge.
Yeah.
And you can dial the pocket from 22 to 6 millimeters, which covers the entire range of hangboards, right? Typically a hangboard is like a Swiss cheese type of thing, where each pocket is a different depth, right? And you have to move your hand from one place to another to get to different depth. The Infini Edge has this interesting knob feature and a mechanism inside, so if you turn the knob, it just continuously moves the back face of that pocket from 26 millimeters down to 6 millimeters to get more and more aggressive. And it comes with a cordelet, so you can hang it from a tree or from a crag or do whatever with it. Use a bolt-on carabiner or something. Or you can, clip it to a weight to do, weighted training. Or you could,
that's very nice.
Yeah, take the cordelet off and just slap it on a wall. And you can also hang from that. But definitely this is in the area of where Plankton wants to be in the long term. If it already exists and it just needs to be made a little bit better, anyone can maybe do that.
Sure.
Want to kind of bring the things that don't exist yet, right, and really kind of help people in a way that is relevant in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. All right. All right. Let's talk a little bit about what you've learned as an entrepreneur since you started Plankton, and maybe what you think could be beneficial advice that you might be able to share today with future or inspiring entrepreneurs.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is this term that gets thrown around quite a lot, and I don't even know if I fully understand what entrepreneurship is, right? I technically started a business, and technically we run a business, and we have a company and all of these things. But at the end of the day, if my best definition goes back, I guess, to you have customers, right? Are you satisfying your customers?
Mm-hmm.
Are you engaging with your customers? Are you meeting new customers? Are you talking to people and making them happy, right? I think that's what business or entrepreneurship really is, right? Like, if other people like what you're doing, right? If your business is doing things that people want to see and want to do, right? Ultimately, that's like entrepreneurship. So that's what I'm constantly learning.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I did learn is how long it takes. Definitely not overnight, right?
Yeah.
Like it's definitely something you work on day in, day out. There's highs and lows. Most importantly, I think if you enjoy what you're doing, it'll get you through kind of the low points to the next high points.
Yes.
And then, yeah, just continually working on that. And I don't know, there's so many other things to talk about, like continually learning, continually, improving, all these kinds of things, right? So I don't know, it's a little too much to kind of just I don't know, spray out like what all entrepreneurship is, but yeah, it's definitely worth doing at some point.
Yeah,
I think. I always thought, okay, well, at some point I should give this a go, right? And there's no time like the present, I suppose.
Yeah.
And yeah, despite COVID, despite the timing and whatnot, still been super enjoyable, still having a ton of fun.
Yeah. Here's a question about, I guess, sort of the manufacturing, the infrastructure for the things that Plankton is hoping to produce. Tell me a little bit about kind of what you found that was already available to you, and maybe some decisions that you made based on what was out there, to kind of meet the needs of Plankton and to keep you on your current trajectory and your schedule.
Yeah, so infrastructure dictates quite a lot. Dictates what you can do, right? And having employees like Hangar 6 is really nice because that significantly increases your capabilities in the very early stages, right? Like, if you had to buy everything in Hangar 6, it would just be, intractable to start anything, right?
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you started from like selling something very expensive, and now you can buy all sorts of other things.
Sure.
But I think that's an ongoing thing as well. Like, as your equipment list increases, your capabilities increase. As you scale up, you can do things more efficiently.
Yeah.
So definitely, there's a trade-off on that. There's a trade-off on you want to optimize for efficiency, or you want to optimize for flexibility, right? And I don't know, you're way more probably familiar with this than I am, Sam, of like prototyping is definitely not optimizing for efficiency.
Correct.
Right? You're optimizing for what you could possibly do.
Yeah. And
then you figure out how to make it more efficiently when like someone really wants that, right? And you need to make a lot of those, right?
Mm-hmm. And
then you can optimize for efficiency later.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing, I guess, about globalization right now, the trend is equipment costs are coming down, right? Like the capability, dollars per unit of capability is coming down, right? Mm-hmm. So now it's crazy. You can buy CNCs and build up entire factories for almost like nothing. Not nothing, but it's completely different from just five years ago or 10 years ago, pieces of equipment that would have been impossible to source as an individual or a small company, right? Now it's available. So yeah, more people should try that and do that, because to make things, definitely it's not like a magical thing or anything, but if you think about the capabilities that normal people have, normal humans have access to these days, versus just a few decades ago, it's absolutely crazy. It's like comparable to the computer revolution, right? So yeah, it's a matter of finding what to make at this point.
All right, that's really awesome.
Yeah. I don't even know if I answered that question.
I think you did. I think. How about this? Let's get into maybe one final question about some specifics that you dealt with as far as resources that were available to you beyond the prototyping stage. Like here in North Carolina, did you find what you needed to get to the next step as far as some scale of manufacturing, or are you in the position where, as you had just mentioned earlier, where it's something that you might have to build out and do on your own?
Still a work in progress, for sure. There's definitely infrastructure in North Carolina. There's the whole furniture making industry here, right? Like a lot of equipment for that. COVID's been great, actually, for furniture. So
how so? Can you...
Well, people are staying home, ordering online, right? Like furniture now can be ordered online, right? So and people are more comfortable with it. So just a few decades ago or a few years ago, even to say, okay, I'm gonna order a couch sight unseen. It just shows up in your house,
right? And
then you're like, if you don't like it, just give it back. I mean, like. The things that we're now comfortable with is absolutely insane, right?
Absolutely.
Like what previous generation lived in a world where it's like, oh, I don't like this rock in my cave, like I want a different shaped rock. I'm gonna use my fingers and just swipe and then click a thing and then a new rock shows up. Like, come on, that's just we're living in a weird kind of future, right? Present, that certain things we think is normal is absolutely not normal, right? But those kinds of things have enabled that, the whole furniture industry doing well in COVID. Like, what the heck? Yeah, those technologies have really enabled, people sell sofas online, right? Not going to name names, who's selling sofas. You can Google that and figure out who's selling sofas online and whatnot. Amazon does a lot. But anywho, all that is crazy, and it's it really feeds back to kind of customer or human interaction and human behavior, right? Who would have predicted, right? The patterns of events that has taken us to this point, right? If you were this brilliant genius in 2018 and you had invested in furniture,
right?
Online selling of furniture. I know some people have, and they are brilliant, but man, that's clever. Because in a global pandemic, you're doing great.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Fascinating. All right. Thank you, Huade. Thank you very much for this conversation today and for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for the second episode of Talking Shop. And we look forward to seeing you next month.
Q&A?
Yes. Is there Q's?
Let's
see if there are any questions that have come in through the live chat, and we'll entertain those.
Sure. I don't know, man. I've been super tangential today.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's great. This is what we want. We're just talking shop.
Cool.
Yeah. So currently there are no tweets in queue for the Q&A. If anyone's viewing and wants to ask a question, just tweet at FFVC Hangar 6 with hashtag Talking Shop January 21st, and we can answer your question.
Give them a moment to see if anybody wants to submit a tweet, and we'll go from there.
Sam, you want to talk about your sweet new printer?
Sure. Yeah. Well, for those of you that don't know, Hangar 6 recently acquired a Mark Forged Metal X 3D metal printing system. So the crates have all arrived. They've been unpacked, and over the course of the next month, we'll have electrical installed, and we'll have all that equipment wired up and installed and ready to go. And we're going to begin offering metal 3D printing here. We're going to start with 3 or 4 stainless, and then we'll go from there. We also have another Mark Forged 3D printer that has the capability of printing a continuous monofilament line of carbon fiber, Kevlar, fiberglass, and a variety of other materials directly into your part. So you end up with a part that is substantially more robust and stronger than anything that will come off of a standard 3D printer. So I'm very excited about that. We're going to be able to make some very impressive components in the very near future here. Any questions?
Yeah.
No? All right.
Talk about living the future.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And it's all just right here, your door. And but I'm with you as far as the couches are concerned. I mean, that's how I ordered my couches.
Right.
My mattress.
Right.
My everything.
Yeah, it just
You know,
shows
like,
up in a
it's
box. Right.
Pretty rare that we go out anymore to do stuff like that.